take it from the Ironwoman. We only have special guests. And I have to say, I went to the shoe store thinking I need a new pair of running shoes. And then I met Ben. And we were talking about running, obviously, when you go and get running shoes. But then in his biography, it says something about actor, comedian, philosopher, runner, marathon runner. I don't know. It's like a total asset of things we can talk about. And first of all, we want to say congratulations to a 2:51:32 marathon. Whoever is a runner knows what 2 hours and 51:32 means. It means BQ, and BQ means Boston qualifiers. Welcome, Ben. Maybe give us a little glimpse into your life. Acting,
Thank you.
comedian,
Thank you.
marathon runner. We can talk forever.
I met Suzanne in the Fleet Feet because I came to New York to pursue acting, graduating with my degree in acting. I got an agent here based out of New York. So I moved here, but running has always been a big part of my life. And I found it especially very healthy for me mentally to have this as an outlet while I'm pursuing the arts, because something about the acting career can be that it's tricky because it's not very linear. You always want to be progressing, but sometimes there's not a direct correlation between the amount of classes you take or the level of gigs you're booking and the progression in your career. You can be making these progressions. For instance, I've been taking improv classes at the Upright Citizens Brigade. And that's been wonderful, moving up through their class levels and learning more about that trade, but doesn't necessarily correlate directly to booking more and more paid gigs or bigger and bigger, like budgeted films or whatever. Whereas in running, with the caveats of injuries and setbacks, there is a certain, what you put into it is what you get out of it. If you are running more mileage, you're going to continue to be able to run more mileage. If you're doing better in your workouts, you are getting faster, and you can have that concrete evidence. A runner is like held steadfast by their times. I can look and see how my times has progressed, whittling away times on races that I've had when I don't like PR or whatnot. I can often look inward and see how I wound up there or set new goals. And that's been very nice to have to keep me sane while doing this other thing that I love.
Yeah. So what comes to my mind is almost like the marathon running is so grounding because you're pounding. And then the acting and the improv is maybe where you're more flexible and more up in the air. Is that a fair comparison?
Yeah, there are a lot less right answers in the acting world. We're always still experimenting with training in the running world, but in general, how much time to take off after a workout, how to recover well, what kinds of workouts are good for the kind of aerobic health you want to build. And you can follow these guidelines and oftentimes find success. Whereas acting, you have a lot of freedom, and there is a lot of many pros that come with that, but also sometimes some cons with that. You can really define your own kind of career, writing your own work, working with the people you want to work with, submitting for many different kinds of roles, and then taking the roles you're given in the direction that makes the most sense to you. On the other hand, sometimes I wish I could be given like an A+ or like a B- on an acting role and be able to know exactly what I should have done differently or exactly how to adjust that, versus that's going to be different for each person.
When I came to New York, everybody said, whoever works in a restaurant is an actor. And now I see you working in the shoe store. So are you also working in the restaurant, or because this is kind of like the prejudice we have for the actors in New York?
Yeah, no, I have not done the restaurant world yet. I'm not opposed. My roommate is a bartender, and it's nice to visit her after working at the running store sometimes. But for me, A few things. It is nice. I showed you before we started recording my wall of shoes that I have in my apartment. I've got a chart of mileage for each of them, and I have 16 shoes in my rotation right now, which is more than any one person ever
Wow.
needs. But it is nice getting employee discounts and free product that fuel this hobby through this career when I'm kind of young and scrappy at the start of this career to have a job that can fuel another passion.
That's
I'm
actually
the
very
one,
clever. That's actually very
yeah,
clever because if you're in a restaurant, okay, you get the food and the booze maybe, but if you're
hmm
a runner, you need shoes and the shoes cost
exactly.
anything from 140 to 330, I learned.
Yeah. Yeah, we just brought in a shoe that's $500 into the store. That's good
What
for
brand
one
is that?
marathon. Adidas.
As I said, it's clever to work in a shoe store because you have to have new shoes every whatever 100 miles. And this is very cool. But then
Yeah.
how is it living in New York, being an actor, being successful? When can we see you in Hollywood? Or you mentioned Shakespeare. Where is your career taking you? How can we follow you?
You can follow me on my Instagram at the_Ben_Brock. I try to post what I'm working on there, and I will make sure to blast everything on my socials whenever I have gigs that I want people to come to. Yeah, I'm still figuring out where I want my career to head. Right now, putting a lot of eggs in different baskets, doing all the New York actor stereotypes of auditioning for Law and Order and Blue Bloods and waiting to hear back. So maybe I'll be a sick patient in something someday to get my foot in the door. I've really been enjoying doing more comedy work with UCB. Every Tuesday night, we have improv jams at 5:30 where any student can get up on stage and perform. I've been doing that every week.
And I want to go back to the running. And before we recorded, we
Please.
talked a little bit about the 251. So what does
Mhm.
251 mean and how was it? The listeners need to know because it's
Yeah.
super fast time. How do you prepare for that? And how is the day on it in itself?
I was very happy with the time. I'd run the marathon distance only one other time before, and there were many hurdles with that race. I felt like it was a double out and back. It was a very small marathon, so I didn't have people to run with most of the race. And I got sick a few weeks before the race, which threw up my training program. So I ran a 3:24, which I was still happy with that time at that point. But to drop over a half an hour in a PR for the marathon is crazy. And I was very excited about that leading up to it. I flew out day before the marathon back to Indiana where the race was, staying with my parents before going on over. I decided not to change much before the race. For the previous race, I was so worried about carbohydrate loading and making sure I had enough fuel that I did too many changes to my diet in the days leading up before the race, and it threw me off. I also, in this training block, did better of practicing my fueling before long runs to be the same as what I would do before the race. So I didn't have as many curveballs thrown in my direction. And then on the day of the race, right, but multiple people had given me the advice of just enjoy it. And I definitely want to hold that while still being aggressive with my time goals. The first marathon that I did kind of crushed me. I was proud of it, but when I finished, I was in so much pain and I wasn't necessarily excited about doing another marathon. It took me like another year to want to do it again. Versus this time, I got to really take in this city that I'd been around growing up with all these people around, running on these streets with no cars on them, taking in the monuments. It was very exciting, and to run with this group of people that I didn't know before the race, but we were all striving for the same goals and working towards it together was very moving and motivational. And it was painful. Obviously, it is always painful at the end of a marathon race. A lot of it is how do you push through those barriers? How do you listen to your body telling you to stop or to ease off and know how to combat that? And you learn a lot about yourself through that. But I was very inspired to be able to finish it and also enjoy the rest of my day. I was very sore, but I recovered a lot better. My training helped me with that. I did a lot more volume in this training block leading up to this marathon versus the last one I had done. And I'll just sort of recap the stages of the race. Being the first half marathon, I was maybe went out a little too quick, but I feel like I adjusted all right. Went out with some people going quicker than me because they're going for the half marathon. Eased off a bit, had a bit from probably like 8 to 10 miles where I was running sort of alone and got to kind of dial in my pace, pull it back a little bit because I'd started out too hot, regain my composure, hydrate a little bit at the water stations, and get back on track so that I hit the half marathon mark with a group of people that were all going for a sub 250. And I was like, maybe I can just hang on to this group as long as possible and just reevaluate every 2 miles if I need to just let them go so that I can focus on my race. Mile 14, I was still good. Mile 16, I was like, I'm still good. Mile 18, I was like, I'm still good. Mile 20, it was starting to hurt, but I tried to hang on a bit. The group had started to break up anyway. Some people had fallen off, some had pulled ahead. So just focusing in on listening to my body because I really didn't want to completely blow up. I knew I was trying to lose some time, but I wanted to still stay in that zone. And I just stay under 7 minutes, and I stayed around that 6:50, 55 mark for the rest of the race.
Just listening to you is amazing. And you also said you studied philosophy. In a way, when you're in the marathon, it's a different philosophy because you're by yourself. So what are you thinking? It seems like you were checking on yourself every 2 miles, which is good because sometimes you overthink of what it is. So what were you thinking other than like, keep steady, keep steady, keep steady?
Yeah, I do use a lot of mantras like other runners. I have a few that I go between. One that my high school coach used to always say of relax and roll is a good one for me. Relax and roll. Helps me focus on the rhythm of my cadence. Helps me not ignore the pain, but just kind of roll with it. Another one is run the mile you're in is a helpful one. And one that happened to me this race was I started just telling myself after the half mile mark, you're not going to blow up. You're not that guy. That's one I started having because I had looked the night before to kind of give myself a pep talk. I scrolled through my Strava of all my major workouts I had done, partly to evaluate what I thought was possible the day before, and gave me some confidence to see the workouts I had been able to do and the times I'd been able to do. Because I had mantras during those workouts of these are the miles that will count when I'm in the race. And so I was looking through those and I was reminding myself of what I had done in the past, and wanting to deliver for that past self was a big driving force. You sacrifice a lot to the marathon. It takes a lot from you in the lead up. There's a lot of, even in your social life, of times I can think back to in this training block where my friends were staying out later than I was, but I knew I had to get better rest so I could do better on my long run the next day, or not having to be with friends because I decided 4 weeks out, I'm just going to not drink anything, focus on my diet. That's one thing I can control. And prioritizing sleep, prioritizing making time for those runs, which would also sometimes make work more draining. Working a job where I'm on my feet a lot, doing a long run before one of those shifts can be tricky. But relating it back to the question with philosophy, something I really like about marathon running is it rewards patience and it rewards the regulation of emotion, which is a big part of philosophy, is being able to check in with your emotions, have those authentic in the moment reactions, but then intellectual evaluation of those emotions and how to apply them to your life and how to apply them to your morals. And long distance running helps reward those traits, and it works as a nice moral ethic too. It promotes good sportsmanship and healthy competition. I've been reading this one book. I'll just say that it's about being an ethical runner, and how a special thing about long distance running, unlike some other sports like sprinting or boxing or wrestling or football, where you have these sports that promote impulsive decision making and explosive
Mhm.
energy, which is nothing against those
Mm-mm.
sports, but like some those will drive different metaphors to your life
Mhm. Mhm.
than a sport that necessarily makes you not go out too hot. Otherwise, you will blow
Mhm.
up in the end. It necessarily makes you rely on the people you're running with who are your competitors to like help you towards the finish. And that's a really special thing about
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
this sport.
Yeah, I like what you said before that you were hanging on to that group and actually you were
Mhm.
helping each other. And a lot of people always ask me, yeah, but marathon running is an individual sport. But as you said, there was also wind coming your way. So why not stay in the pack so you
Yeah.
can help each other? And maybe one takes the lead, the next takes the lead, and you can work together.
Hmm.
And the ethics in sports, it's all about yeah, being an athlete and
Hmm.
helping each other, but then take that also into your regular life to be ethical with what you're doing.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. For instance, there was a moment around mile 11, mile 10 or 11, where as we passed the mile mark, there was man next to me, probably late 30s, early 40s, who looked at his watch at the same time and he asked me, what do you have for our average miles coming in? Because GPS was a little off at the start of this race. And so I was saying, I'm like around 633, 634 mile average. So on pace for a sub 250. Is that what you have? And he's like, yeah, around there. I'm having a hard time reading my watch. Is that what you're aiming for? And he was like, yeah. And I was like, okay, well, right now there's no one really around us and it's windy. Feel free to tuck in. At some point, I might tuck in behind you. There's no reason for us both to break the wind.
Mm.
So even though we're both competing, just simply we're both running the same pace. The race is going to be harder for each of us if we run shoulder to shoulder versus someone tucked in right beside and then switching off.
Mm.
So it just makes sense to run together and work together. And also, one of the quotes from this book that I've been reading was taking issue with the phrase comparison is the thief of joy, saying that envy is the thief of joy, but comparison isn't. Comparison is usually a very healthy thing in athletics. It's how we get better. And it's how we brainstorm ways to switch up our training, how to work differently with our coaches and our peers. And I was a part of working with that group that I was running with. We're all going for similar goals. We've all probably done slightly different training plans, and we had ran different races to meet up around that half marathon amount because there are people that had probably fallen off from going too hot at the start. There were people that
Mhm.
had like just then caught up because they had started out too slow. And then you had a few people that had just been running that 6:33 even each mile up to that point, but we were all going for the same thing.
Mm. What do you do when you don't work and run, like reading and acting? Is there anything else that you add onto your plate? And what other advice would you give to runners who can follow in your footsteps?
Hmm. I cook and I bake. That's something that is just a fun hobby to have, but it does help those other goals, especially athletic goals of when you know exactly what you're putting into your food. You don't have to think as much about your diet. We
Mhm.
intuitively know how to make good food and know the fuel we're eating. I don't count calories. I don't count carbs. I'm not that intense about my running career, my body image. Knowing what I'm making is fun and an art in and of itself. And baking sweet treats is just fun and a great way to share things with friends and build community, have people over. If I make a large batch of chocolate chip cookies or a cake, I'm not eating that alone. So it's fun to have
Oh,
community built around that.
well, that's wonderful. It seems like it's important to you that support in the community for
Oh,
you.
definitely. I couldn't have ran a 2:51:32 without the help of the friends I'd made at the Princeton Running Club, the friends I'd made at this Fleet Feet in New York, without my roommate who knows very little about running but loves supporting my goals, and without my family offering me a place to stay while I got ready for the race, and my sister who ran the race too and had an amazing PR and was able to share some of the long runs that I did with me without being inspired by the athletes that I saw at the front of the pack
Yeah.
in New York. It's all about the community.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for giving us a glimpse And we'll see you next year in New York and then 2026 in Boston. Good luck. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. What are you taking away from this 2:51:32 marathon? Congratulations. BQ means Boston qualifier and PR means personal record. All the good stuff. Take it from the Ironwoman. We have episodes every Monday, and also get the book, download it, or get it in your local bookstore. It's global business coaching with sports parallels. It's my life from Switzerland to New York to Kilimanjaro, and also completing the Ironman in Lake Placid. Thank you for your support. Like us and write a review on your preferred podcasting platform. Bye-bye.